I believe that in the world we live in today, we have troubles and trials everywhere that we look and what we experience in life. I haven't talked to anybody probably in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months, up to a year probably, that has not had some comment about some hardship or trial that they've experienced in their life throughout this last year, and especially with the COVID virus and things that are around us and how it affects us. I do believe this. I believe that there is a purpose for every trial and struggle and event that we face in our lives. I believe that we are not alone when we face these things. I believe that when we are going through the low times of life, of trials or struggles or tribulations or challenges, whatever you want to call them, I believe that Christ is right there with us. And I believe also, a lot of I believes in this, but I believe also that Christ intentionally allows trials and temptations and struggles to come into our lives. Because through those and our relationship with Christ, it is supposed to form us and make us. In the book of Galatians, chapter 2, and verse 20, Galatians chapter 2 and verse 20, it says this: I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith in the Son of God, who loved me and delivered me up to him or for him. So you see, by that verse alone, and there's many verses in the Bible that talk about this very issue and topic. But I believe that Christ allows trials and struggles to come into our life to form us into a better relationship with him, if we allow him to. There's a story told of a young lady who was complaining to her father about how just time and time again in her life that she seemed like she was going from one struggle to another. Something would come into her life and she would fight through it and work through it, and just when she was getting it conquered, another one would come and overtake her life. Her father quietly got up and took her by the hand and took her in the kitchen. Sat her there in the kitchen stool and quietly, did not say a word to her, just quietly went to the cupboard and brought out 3 pans and filled them with water and put them on the stove and turned the stove up, burners up onto high until the water was boiling. Then in the first pan, he took and put a potato. In the second pan of boiling water, he put an egg. In the third one, he took some freshly ground coffee, a rich flavored coffee, and put that in the boiling water. And again, not saying anything, just sat back and waited. And the daughter was getting quite impatient, but the father didn't say a word, and she was wise enough to know that not to interrupt whatever dad was doing. After about 20 minutes, he quietly got up again and went to the stove and took the pans off the stove. Took out the potato and put it on a plate, took the egg and put it on another plate, and carefully went and ladled some of the water that the coffee had been boiling in and put it in a saucer or a cup and put it on another plate. Then he turned and looked at his daughter and said, "What do you see?" "Well, I see a potato, an egg, and a cup of coffee." "Okay. Touch the potato. What do you feel?" She reached out very carefully and touched the potato, and it was mushy and gooey. Then he said, "Touch the egg." She reached out the egg, and it was hard. He said, "Crack the egg," and cracked it, and they peeled the egg, and what do you see? Well, that soft inside egg was now hard boiled egg. Then he took the cup of coffee and gave it to her and said, "Taste this." And the sweet aroma of the coffee was filling her nostrils already, and she began to smile, and She took a little sip of the coffee, and she just said, "Oh, that's so good." Her dad stepped back and said, "So what did you learn from this?" The egg and the potato and the coffee all went through the same trial and tribulation and struggle in their life. But they responded differently to it, didn't they? It caused the young lady to stop and to think just a little bit. Friends, that is the same way with you and I. Trials and struggles are going to come into our life. How do you and I choose to respond to them? That's really the decision that we have to make. How are we going to respond? Are we going to come out soft, beaten, bruised? Come out hard and calloused like the egg? Or come out on the other side of the trial and struggle with a sweeter understanding of Christ's presence in our life, that he did not leave us, but he made us into something better because our faith has been increased through this process with our relationship with him. A purpose for every struggle and trial in our lives. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 4, in verse 15, it says, "We do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses." Let me rephrase that just a little bit. We don't have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our trials, our struggles, our daily lives. But we have one who has been tempted, who has experienced all the same things we have, but yet was without sin. Do you get it? Every trial, every struggle that we have in our life serves a purpose. And Christ intentionally allows those things to come into our life to refine us. Some people say, well, Christ has left me. No, Christ has never left us. Christ is always right there by our sides, leading us. Reminds me of the poem, and I can't remember it word for word, but the poem of Footprints. The gist of it is there's two footprints walking down the sand on the beach, and all of a sudden there's only one. The person going through the struggle and the trial said, "Yeah, but God, where were you?" And he said, "When you saw one, I was carrying you through that trial." A purpose for every struggle and trial in our life. What would happen if we looked at every day and every struggle and trial as a way to come closer to God and rely upon him more? You think it would make a difference? I do. So I want to encourage you today as you go forward in your life. Don't think about the things in the past. Don't think about what tomorrow is going to bring. Focus on what today is in your relationship with Christ. Allow him to carry you through. And build your faith and trust in him. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, remember, there's a purpose for every trial and every struggle, and God is with you at all times.